Kimmy,
We're back.
we are so back. And in true form, great plans to launch on Halloween did not work out.
No, actually, it is Halloween, and we're recording this bumper on Halloween for the first episode.
Right. But we're not dropping this until
No,
the 12th of November.
no. So we're still the same. In case anyone out there was wondering, we're still exactly the same as we were when we
Yeah, we
started
have
this.
not matured one iota. No,
No,
we've gone through a pandemic, we've gone through all this stuff, and Kimmy and Lou are still very, very immature.
yeah, and time, um, you know, time creative. Let's say it that way.
Time creative. So, but this new iteration of chaos and creativity has a lot of intent and organization behind it. So maybe
Yes.
we did grow up a little bit.
Yes, it's not just going to be me and Lou rambling for like 40 minutes to an hour, maybe sometimes, but for the most part, we actually have really exciting guests that we're bringing on board to talk about their creative path and just their path in general. And we have some really cool guests lined up for this season, starting with our very first guest. Do you want to talk about Caydie, Lou?
Oh my God, Katie McCumber. I have an intellectual crush on this woman. She's a tour de force, a photographer, and she created the Creative Supper Club, which has completely blown up on social media, especially in the LinkedIn space, where she has people apply, not from an elitist perspective, but from a perspective of she's trying to get people together for dinner that can complement each other. So we have photographers and art buyers, but we also have illustrators and artists, and it's just an amazing mix of people that sit down at a dinner table and have conversation. And she asks everybody to leave their ego at the door, which is just a wonderful way to get everybody tried and true and right down to their soul of who they are as a creative person.
Yeah, I remember when you were telling me when you first met, or you first, I don't know if you how you heard about it, but I remember when you first started kind of um attending and also talking about it. And I was like, what an amazing idea for a way to get creatives together. Um,
Yes.
and I loved her episode so much. I really relate to her in a lot of ways, being a creative myself and kind of in the same age bracket as her. I just was like super moved by what she had to say. And I loved that the entire episode started with a theme around Halloween. You were like, what's a scary moment that you turned into art, or how do you turn scary moments into art? And I actually really love that question beyond like a Halloweeny scary thing. And I really think like anyone who's maybe kind of had some ups and downs in their creative career and is kind of like unsure what to do, like will really appreciate this episode from that standpoint, because she really hits a lot of like emotional points where you're like, yeah, that is what it's like to be an artist. And yeah, that is a scary thing. And this is turning points that we all face no matter where we are, age, or in our creative career. So I'm really excited
Yeah.
to share this with everyone.
And I think one of the things that she does is she speaks from the heart and she speaks candidly. So
Yeah,
we have this incredible woman that we can all identify with. And so much of what we all do for a living is, there's a lot of fear in how we run the path. And, it's becoming more and more complicated as we keep going on. But, creators are creatives no matter what they do. So I think a big part of what we're doing with this podcast is really um, allowing people to identify with the people who are doing who has some notoriety out there. And I think it's going to be a really good way to go for the next couple of seasons.
totally. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview between you two.
That's perfect. See you at the end of it. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming up and surviving being sick last week. Is that what it was?
Yeah, we're calling it a standard illness. Who knows what it really was, but
I like that, a standard illness. Where does that come from?
it's like a pre-COVID reference.
Is it?
Yeah, not one that exists in reality, but I made it up because every illness before COVID was standard.
I am fairly certain that is going to be a thing. I'm just gonna,
Heard
everything's
it
an
here
SI, a standard illness. So, so we're dropping this on Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
which is my favorite holiday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, I used to do fun things in Los Angeles with
Oh,
my front porch when I was working the prop houses and all the special effects companies
oh
that
my
I would
God.
rent stuff during the year. I said, I'm doing something for the kids. And they would like hide it on like ABC's bill or something like that.
Oh
It was
my God.
amazing. They were just so good to me and the
Back in the
kids
glory days.
back in the glory. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is that was sort of on my mind a lot as we start approaching Halloween is how scary events influence creativity and what that looks like. And I was just wondering if you had any experience with that.
Such a deep question for
I know we're
Halloween.
going deep right
But I
away.
mean, it is. It has to be, right? Unless it's just like a straightforward scary event led to, oh, that's a great idea for a project.
You're right.
Uh,
And you don't have to tell me what the scary event was, but like, how do things that frighten you influence your art?
yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I feel like for me, like, I'm going to go all the way back to art school
Yeah.
because I feel like art school was my like version of therapy.
Oh, okay.
I like definitely used it that way because as like a young conceptual artist, you're really encouraged to pull from your own experiences and like make art that's true to who you are. And for some people, oh God, I want to reference like some really gnarly photos that I saw in school, but they were not PG. Let's say that.
Right.
Yeah, for some people, that was like a different story, and for me, it was very much like working through my childhood trauma. So I would say my senior thesis was probably like the fruition of my scary stories, but in like a beautiful twist, but definitely was inspired by.
Do you feel like giving your scary stories and manifesting it in art was your way of processing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
1000%. I think as artists, like as a writer,
Yeah.
as anybody who is creating something that wasn't there before, if you're pulling from your own experiences, it has to be processing to make anything that's worth looking at. It has to be anyways. Otherwise, you're telling a story that's not yours and nobody cares about that.
Right.
So, I mean, any art that I think is measurably good or objectively good that's out in the world that people enjoy is probably because it's been pulled from some personal experience.
So something that it measurably being, does it resonate? Do
Yeah,
people find inspiration or do they find some sort of gratification for having looked at it?
exactly. Or listened to it or read it. Exactly. Like any book, music, visual piece of art that, especially like the ones that resonate with the masses, it's generally because you're like telling a story that evokes a feeling because it's relatable to other people, because we all end up having like similar experiences in life.
From my perspective, I've had moments in my life that were profoundly scary that also carry with it like a little shame, and I don't want it out in the public. And that was a bridge that I had to cross to like tap into that power
Yep.
of the inspiration and understand like, well, this is going out. Clever people are going to say like, this happened to that dude. And
Yep.
so when you made that leap to do your art based on these scary situations that you were exposed to, was that something you thought about?
Absolutely.
And how did you feel about
Especially in college, I was like 20, 22, whatever it was. It's incredibly vulnerable to share like any childhood trauma you experienced, because I think any kid with childhood trauma would agree that like one of the things that you build through that is strength,
that? Right.
and strength at that time and that age doesn't feel like vulnerability.
Of course not. Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I definitely remember, I have like very visceral memories of having to do, critiques and show my work and let people critique it before I told the artist statement of what it's about, and then having to tell the artist statement, and then just feeling like so lame and like gross. And I was like so ashamed of myself for having made art that was true to my story, or like I was just like, it was shameful to tell my story.
Do you think that's one of the, people ask me about being creative for a living, and I just spoke to somebody, Tim Redman, who is the legendary editor of the Bay Guardian for decades, who's now teaching at USF in San Francisco, sent me one of his students. And we were talking about the professional creative life. And I said, if it feels like it's this constant undulating existence, just get used to it. Because that's
that's real.
That's right. Yeah. Because it's not changing.
Yeah.
And the shame that you were talking about, that you have to get through to find the things that will inspire, is a journey. I mean, it's a scary, weird thing. But do you find that now that you're been doing this for a while, do you find that you're getting better at understanding, that processing that shame to get through?
Definitely. I mean, I think the first step was art school and putting it out on the line in front of like people I knew well and was afraid to be judged by. And then, after that, I realized, I think through sharing stories on social media or just with acquaintances or friends or family even, that it's so relatable. Like what I went through as a kid wasn't that crazy compared to a lot of people, but I felt such shame around it because, we were poor and there were like things of that were like really shameful for me. And then, lots of other things, but it's so relatable. And the more that I've shared those stories, the more I've noticed that people are attracted to me as a human because they can relate to me. That authenticity relates. Like that's why Taylor Swift's killing it.
Right.
She writes these love stories that everybody can relate to. Like the more we're sharing these like quote unquote like shameful or intimate experiences that we've had, I think the more it opens up your world to like just
we are all interconnected,
exactly,
aren't we, through our feelings. And
exactly.
There are, we have feelings, we have these things, and we think that we're the only ones doing it. And then if you just find one other person,
exactly.
It's like, oh, I'm not crazy.
Yeah. And now honestly I wear it as like a badge of honor.
Right.
I love to tell people that I grew up poor, because I've realized too, as I've gotten older and through, I think when you and I first met, I told you I was raised feral, but
Right.
I'm like very poised when you meet me because I've been so conscious of the fact that I was raised feral.
That's very funny.
And so I like to show up as like having it together so that people can't see that I was the poor kid.
Right.
And so I've realized that overcorrection has led people to feel like I'm other, or like I met a friend who told me a few months into our friendship that she thought I was like a trust fund kid. And I was both honored and like shocked. Right. But that to me is like so not relatable. That's not the experience. And now I'm like, okay, no, I need to like let people know that I don't know, or not let people know. It's not like people need to know this, but I want to share that I got to where I am.
Maybe it's just to be available to share.
Yeah,
if called upon, or if you feel it's right.
If it feels like the right situation. Yeah, I don't just like advertise it.
Well, and then there are other people who do advertise it a little too much.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
All right, is this contrived or is this real?
Yeah.
Like, it's a very fine balance.
Absolutely.
All of that. But art and the madness that comes with it is a very fine balance, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that like the more that we all kind of understand each other and like can relate to each other, I think the better. So like having those intimate conversations has become one of my favorite things with like newer friends or even old friends. Like it's so nice to get to go deep with friends and talk about, I don't know, shared experiences that you once felt such shame about, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue to the Creative Supper Club, which
interesting
started.
Segue.
Yeah. Because when we met and you were doing the Supper Club, it was really about trying to get a room full of people of diverse creative backgrounds or diverse creative passions, probably a better way to put it, and to let them talk.
Yep.
you know,
Exactly. Level the playing field.
level the playing field, let everybody talk. And we're in this barn in the country.
Was one of them, yeah.
Yeah. And
They're always different.
they're always different. And it's just one of those things that I think is really, really pretty important, which goes back to where we started, in that we all have these shared experiences. We all have these anxieties, and no one is above it. And of course, the weird thing, which is mildly paradoxical, as you keep climbing the ladder in pursuit of success, you think it goes away when in fact it becomes more critical. And the weird paradox is, as you rise up through the ladder, you become more insulated because you have more people that are making money off of your creativity, and they want to make sure you're happy. But then where's the rough? Where's the edge?
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is, and I don't know if it's to like my benefit or not, but it's why I like to talk about the adversity that I've had in my life, to especially like, I don't know, again, I don't beat it over the head, but I like to point to it, or like talk to my assistants specifically when I'm on shoots about the difficulty of like climbing the ladder and how to get from point A to point B, and that, and also just let them know that like I know where they're at because I've been there, and I know that stage of the career was hard and there are challenges that come with it, but I like to let them know that like where I'm sitting isn't that different.
Right.
Because that's the misconception. That's what I always thought when I was an assistant.
Yeah.
So once I get there, I'll be good.
No,
it never goes away.
It never goes away. One of the things when I wrote the advertising photography book in 2007, at the time, there were many people who were photographers that were getting on stage and saying, "I've been touched by the hand of God, which is why I'm successful." And a big part of what the book
sounds right.
Yeah, a big part of what the book was to debunk that. I took, we interviewed people who were just starting out and people who were super veteran, and got their story, wrote them up in the book. And what happened was everybody started from the same place.
Yep.
Everyone was scared. Everyone was nervous. Everybody just went for it. And it was this huge roll of the dice. And there's no right way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like, and back to like Supper Club, that's exactly the kind of like conversation or environment I want to create, is like, we are all the same.
Right.
And we all have come into this like creative commercial advertising world from whatever backgrounds we've had, but like we're all doing the same dance. And there's a lot of perceived ego, if not real ego, involved in certain careers and certain hierarchies on set and certain, I don't know, just dynamics that go on within the industry. And so I started the Supper Club as a way to like get a bunch of people in different levels in their careers from every side of the industry, from like production, in-house creative directors, freelance art directors, photographers, all of the people, makeup artists, whoever works in this industry, to get them all at the same table in an intimate group, and let them just talk as humans, to just so that they could see we're all just people first. Like, we're all doing one thing, which is trying to survive.
Right.
And then from there, they can decide whether they want to look into each other's professional careers and work together and collaborate. And it doesn't have to be about that ego and hierarchy.
Right. My take on it, just from my experience, is always, it always felt like leave your ego at the door, because you need to have a certain level of selfishness or self-awareness or self-centeredness to survive this industry, because it requires a certain amount of confidence, because you're going into these rooms with people that you don't know, and you're pitching them a visual idea that you have that you can see, but there's no projector coming out of your eyeballs that lets other people see it. And so it does require a certain level of confidence. But I think leaving your ego at the door is a good way to describe Supper Club, because everybody seems to do it, and they're not even asked to.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen, I've been to 3 Supper Clubs now.
Yeah, I don't talk about ego at all.
Yeah, no, but I've never seen anybody.
People get the assignment.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody act out. Everybody dresses their dress and presents as they want to present.
Yeah.
But nobody acts out. Nobody. Yeah. It's not like.
Well, I think that's I don't know if this will sound, how this will sound, but I feel like that's part of my job as like the host, right? Is to create this environment where people can just be weird and be free to be whoever they feel like being. I'm such a nerd at heart. I'm sure you realize, but like, I'm like such a little dork, and I can't, like, the cool persona is so far from who I am. And so, while I would love to be able to create this like really cool, like smoking cigarettes event,
Right.
that's not ever going to happen for me. So I have to, embrace my authenticity and come to those dinners as like the biggest version of myself, to give everybody else permission to do the same thing.
Right.
Nobody has to feel like they have to be some cool version of them because they're creative at this cool creative dinner. Everybody just kind of lets their hair down, and like everybody's so real,
And
I love it.
The sense that I got from my attendance was everybody was relieved to be real. Like they walk in the door and it's like, okay, you can just see shoulders drop, literally.
Yeah,
And then you
exactly.
have that first glass of wine, it's like, oh, okay.
Like people are just being normal.
Okay. And then you can find your kindred spirit. Like I spoke to people that are creative in ways that I'm not, and I got to ask them about that. And
That's so cool.
it was
I love
really
hearing
nice.
that.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you say that that you're a nerd, because your work is cool. It's like, I love your stuff.
It's really funny.
It's really,
like now I'm like, am I trying too hard?
No, you're fine. That's the problem with contemporary society these days. It's like, am I trying too hard? Am I not trying? Oh my God. Where do I fit? Who's judging me?
Yeah, the internal voices are real.
Oh my God. There's a lot of them, aren't they? It's like, shh, quiet. They're talking right now.
Yeah, it's a choir in there.
But it's, your work is ebullient for, it's just,
Wait, what is this word?
I know.
That was a beautiful word.
Thank you.
Can you explain it to the rest of us? It's an onomatopoeia. I think.
Vivacious, like just
Ooh.
really, really full of energy. It's a lot of alacrity. Ebullient.
Ebullient.
Oh my God. I feel like this is the
Send me that in a text so I can
completely
remember it.
Today's safe word, ebullient. So, so it's interesting to me that you, from art school, you had this sort of period of exploring your darkness, and then
oh man, yeah,
the
difference.
But the thing is that I look at your work now, and it's really full of life, and it has a very magical ability to tell story through action and light.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a sweet, and that's exactly how I guess I would hope it comes off, because it's funny. I do think there are like similar ties from what I did in art school to what I'm doing now. It's just I put like the commercial spin on it, right? But one of the stories that I like love to tell subtly in my work, and sometimes more overtly, is like the heroine story, the empowered woman, or I like to change the gender roles in certain situations that, I would be more traditionally like the male role in any given scene. I try to like make it the female role,
Which is one of my most favorite aesthetics. I was really a fan of, from when I was shooting, and the androgyny of the late 80s and the early 90s. I was always really fascinated by that. And it's a different look now than it was then. And I think the trading gender roles now has much more of a social impact in terms of what it represents, versus then it was a look. Does that make sense? There's more depth to the look now than there was back in the 80s.
No, totally.
So that's interesting that you do that. And is that, so being a woman in this industry, which is challenging, or can be challenging, I feel like we're making...
definitely. We could do a whole podcast on that.
We could totally do it.
Nobody wants to hear it, though.
I know.
Everybody's sick of that conversation.
Oh, God.
Anyways, I digress.
But digress all you want. It's fine. You're among friends. But it is interesting that what you're doing with your work and coming from a place of darkness when you started in this art form, do you find times that you still are producing dark work to help you process contemporary scary situations in your life? And it doesn't necessarily have to be an event like I got held up, or I mean,
Yeah.
I've had my times of dark places, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. I think the last 20 years, whatever it's been, that I've been gunning towards being a commercial photographer, and now I've like arrived and I'm like, "Oh, is this what it is?" Huh. Um
Yeah, right.
it's I have definitely put aside like my film camera and my like art school brain, and I've thought about different art projects that I'd like to do in my head, and it almost feels like I've done them in that way, but I haven't actually done them. And in the last year, I'm like, I don't want to see another smiling face. I don't want to see another like happy woman, drinking a smoothie. I want to like go and make some gross images that nobody's ever going to see, and
Right.
just hide the film and like never show it to the world. I've been so like drawn to that, and I'm kind of like internally battling myself right now, because now I'm seeing this shift in the industry. And I'm a contrarian like by nature, and it's really annoying because anytime I see the masses doing something, I'm like, I'll never do that. That's so stupid. I'm not a sheep. Like I never saw Lord of the Rings or whatever those, what was that? There was some Lord of the Rings type show that everybody was really into. It doesn't matter. Never saw an episode until the final one. It was hilarious.
Right.
But when everybody started shooting film and film starting becoming popular again on the commercial, platform, I was like, oh God, how annoying of you guys. Like everybody's doing it.
Right.
And then now there's this thing happening where a lot of the big campaigns are going to fine art photographers. And it doesn't have to be a well-established fine art photographer, but like the photographers behind these campaigns, when you go to their website, the work that's there is so not commercial.
Right. It's very sort of
ethereal. It's very ethereal and
yeah,
all the things. So I'm struggling with myself because that's what I want to be doing. But I also am like, I don't want to do it for you guys. Like it feels like I would be doing it for other people if I did that and then showed it to the world.
Contrarian. There was a time back in the mid 90s or early 2000s where cross-processing film had to be pre-digital. Cross-processing film became all the rage. And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, ugh.
I just couldn't do it.
It's like wide angle lenses. I avoided that for a hot minute.
Yeah. And for the time that cross-processing was very popular, I would just pray every night that like, this has got to go away because I'm really running out of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And but it's a
Totally.
thing. It's a thing when a trend comes up that doesn't meet with you.
So hot. Everybody wants it.
And do you do it or do you not do it? And I don't even think it's about betraying yourself as much as can you operate in that environment or that milieu, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it comes back to like that authenticity idea. Like if I'm doing what everybody's doing, is it authentic? But then I'm like, but have I been doing what everybody's been doing up until this point with photography? It gets really, the choir really lights up.
And it gets louder with every sip of my wine. So, yeah. And I think, what we've proven today is that it is a constantly changing situation. And if you go into being a photographer or a professional creative with the intent of finding your plateau, there's no plateau.
No, totally. I mean, there's always going to be places to push yourself and like levels to find. It's definitely in that way torturing.
Right.
But I also think that like, I've been thinking a lot about like peace and like inner calmness lately, and like how to attain that in this industry, because how do I describe this? I've looked around at all my friends that have full-time jobs and they're like doing one thing that feeds them and then they have like a life outside of it.
Right.
Right? They
Like
have
the programmer,
hobbies.
the programmer who plays guitar at night.
Right. Like they've learned this cool other skill. I have no other skills at this point.
Right.
I have very few skills because my entire mental, physical process has been taken over by how to continue down this path towards being a great photographer in this industry.
That is a fascinating perspective.
It's horrible. It's like coming to this realization at age 37 and a half is like, oh, huh. Like how do I where do I go from there?
It's interesting because when the remuneration for what we did for a living or do for a living, it was high and people looked at, wow, you make all this money. And that was the trade-off. Well, I'm going to stay focused on this thing. I'm going to keep the bucks rolling in. But as the corporate machine and the cost consultants and everything is beating fees down and usage rates, we now have to start thinking about like, okay, this is my mainstream, but there's these other things that I have to do. And it's almost like we have to start thinking like the prototypical person who has the artistic flair but works in the big company. No judgment on any of those people, but it is different because we used to be rewarded for climbing the ladder, for going through the muck, for being so focused on the one thing that we do well. And now that's going away. I think it causes a lot of confusion.
Absolutely. Literally exactly that, especially like this industry and the time that I've been in it has changed so much. And there was a time when I was like, okay, when I get to this place, then I'll be like, freed in the sense that like the financial element won't be the fear and I'll be able to like, make the art that I want to make if I want to make it or do other things, like have hobbies.
Right.
And now I'm starting to think that actually might never exist in this career in the future. And that's a very dark take and it may not be true, but
I think it's worth exploring.
It's worth exploring.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And one of the things that I've always kept in my mind as when I was shooting all the time is that when I was feeling down about what I was doing and I looked at my friends that were going into offices and the cliche is like, well, you have to go to an office. But the real sort of enlightenment there is like, I can go anywhere in the world and be a photographer. Anywhere in the world and be a photographer. And I think there's something freeing about that knowledge.
It's funny because that's what I thought when I started. That was part of the appeal, right?
Yeah.
I can go anywhere and do this, but this job is so based on your territory, on where you live and what you have access to, because of the constant hustle of continue showing new work. So if you're not getting paid to do shoots, you should be doing test shoots. And who do you have access to in your local surroundings?
Right.
Which is why I think a lot of people still flock to like LA and New York.
Right.
And the folks in like the, more rural or smaller cities are more limited in terms of like the jobs that they'll get hired to do. And that's not always true, but generally that's very true.
I would totally agree with that. It's a very sobering thought.
Oh, it's never been more sober in my life. No, but I mean, I guess back to like the thought of calm and peace is like, is there a way to continue as a photographer and feel happy? Wow, that sounds so dark.
Wow.
But feel like fulfilled, I guess. Happy is a construct.
Happy is a construct. Maybe it comes down to understanding this is what I do to make. I mean, my career was, the jobs I had were very unglamorous. Then the jobs that were glamorous were insanely glamorous.
Yeah, we
There
love
was,
that.
you know,
That's the fun stuff.
that's the fun stuff. And that was like the carrot. Oh, I'm going to keep doing it because I want
Yeah,
one of those
exactly.
again.
Well, see, and that's partially why I've like kept Supper Club going. I'm trying to find my peace and my joy within what I'm doing, or like things that I can be doing on the side that build that for me and build that fulfillment. And Supper Club has been like one of the main sources of just, I am not gaining anything from doing supper, like financially, not making a cent. In fact, losing cents.
Right.
But emotionally, I have never felt better about myself than when all of these people that were previously strangers get into this room together and see how magical this feeling is of like no ego, openness, community. It's like I feel so fulfilled doing that for people.
And that reminds me of the conversation we had about a month ago when we were out for drinks, is that if you keep doing that, something will sprout from that. I feel like that. And I think that if people who are listening to this have a idea or a passion, that they should pursue it, because if it's fulfilling, it makes you feel good, makes you want to get up in the morning. And then something good will happen from that, because somebody will notice, and a market will sometimes create itself around what you're doing.
And I feel like I should I still love doing photography. Like when I get these jobs and I get to go and be a part of a crew, and like that still feels very fulfilling.
It's magic, really.
It's magic.
Yeah.
It's absolute magic. And I think that's kind of part of the feeling that trickles over to Supper Club. It's like, it's that community element. It's that like we're doing this crazy thing on one day and then it's over, and it's like it's inspiring, right? So I guess I don't want to say like I don't want to sound like I hate photography or my careers makes me sad or anything, but it's like in what ways can we step back from our own internal processes of how this career is supposed to work, because it is ever changing and because it is such a hustle culture and it's like so personally driven that it's just hard to feel fulfilled by it, because there's always something that you can improve. It's hard to feel that calm peace.
Right.
So yeah.
And maybe the calm peace comes from the other endeavors.
Exactly.
So
yeah, it's the hobbies, guys. We need hobbies, it turns out.
Lots of hobbies.
Yeah, like should I take up woodworking? Yeah, maybe.
Which is why I crocheted you this sweater.
Yeah. Well, that's the other funny thing. I actually did take up, I was like refinishing mid-century modern furniture for a hot minute there, and I had so much fun doing it, but I felt like I couldn't talk about it at work because I thought people like I overanalyze everything, it turns out, guys.
Right.
I was like, oh, if I talk about my furniture hustle at work, like they're gonna think I'm not doing photography anymore and I'm just a furniture person.
God. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, we all have that anxiety, trust me. There's so many things that I didn't talk about that I should have talked about. Wow. But what are you doing for Halloween? Candy?
Candy? Like, am I eating it? Oh, probably. I mean, when don't I? Let's be real. Love candy. Yeah, I am gonna be spending Halloween with my partner and his 5-year-old son.
Oh, fun.
So, and I think he's planning to be a single Lego block. So I was really pushing for something a little more creative, but c'est la vie. It's an easy costume.
Brilliant.
That'll be my Halloween. It's pretty low key.
Which is a good thing these days. You're finding your inner peace with your Halloween.
My inner piece of candy.
Exactly. Caydie McCumber, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really special to get to be a part of this, and I can't wait to see what you do with it.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Thanks.
Bye.
What do you think?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. There was one part that I so related to, and it was how she talked about authenticity and being authentic, and how she, for a really long time, felt like she always had to put like her backstory and her trauma into her art in order to be authentic. And as she grew as an artist, she's like, I don't actually always just have to rely on my backstory to be an authentic artist. And I really relate to that because I think across the board, we're always kind of taught, like use your pain but eventually it's like, okay, well, eventually if you just keep doing that for like 30 years, it's just going to be like this repetitive thing versus when you start drawing from outside of yourself, you can still be
Yes.
authentic. And I love that because I really actually had to think about my own practice. I'm like, yeah, I still write a lot of songs and things about the same sort of things. You know what I mean? Where I'm like,
Right.
oh, and I think some of my best songs are actually about outside influences that have shaped me and are an authentic part of my life. But I really, the entire discussion that you guys had about the authenticity and how to use that was really interesting to me.
And one of the things that I took away from it is that you can channel sort of that fear from your past or the complications or challenges of your past and sort of wrangle it into an energy for courage for pursuing things outside of your comfort zone, which I feel like Katie really kind of brought home in the way she spoke about things and the way she just kept plowing forward.
Totally. Yeah. You can tell that she's just been doing her practice for a long time, and she I can't wait to someday hopefully meet her because I really just love her vibe and like her attitude. And yeah, definitely check out her work online and check out the Creative Supper Club because that is really
That
cool.
that is amazing. Yeah, so it's going to be a really good thing going forward. So
Yeah. And you can check out all of the information about Katie in our show notes. We'll drop links to her Instagram, to the Creative Supper Club, etc., so that you can kind of dive deeper if you want to.
um how are things in Berlin?
Well, it's like 4 p.m. and it's dark. So that's where I'm at. We have like 5 hours of daylight now, but I'm doing great. I'm fine. This is
All right.
fine.
All right. Here at Chaos and Creativity HQ in Northern California, things are beautiful and bright and happy.
Well, isn't that good for you?
I'm Lou Lesko.
And I'm Kimmy Recor.
Chaos and Creativity is brought to you by Blinkvid Software. It is produced by Claire Duncan, and we are based in California and Germany.
See you for the next episode.
See you for the next episode.